All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'll go ahead and apologize in advance. I'm a wanderer and a walker, so it's going to be really hard for me to stay at this podium, but I'm going to do my best. So anyway, a quick introduction. I'm with the Winston Salem County Office of Emergency Management, and yes, it is impossible to put that in a registration form somewhere, so don't even try it. We have to abbreviate a lot, and it gets difficult. So to kind of tell you a little bit of background about myself, I was with County Fire for 20 plus years before I come into emergency management back in 2015. And I have realized after being here that, yes, I am the least tech-savvy person here. I will go and say up front, I'm still working on my Commodore 64 at home. Actually, that's the joke. We just upgraded to Windows 98, so we're actually making advancements there. So, but no, on a serious note, I cannot tell you how most of this stuff works, but what I'm going to tell you about is our lessons learned from Weaver Fire. One, a little bit about the fire itself, because when you learn about a case, you kind of need to know the background. So a lot of the stuff that you probably don't care about, I took out because this is an hour-plus presentation, but I've reduced it down to 20 minutes, which is going to be difficult, but we're going to make it to kind of tailor it to one, our relationship with our GIS department, with Matt Forsyth, because it wasn't something we just developed the night this fire took place. So anyway, we'll kind of dive into it. Then at the end, we'll do questions. Normally, I say ask questions as you think, because I'm an old guy that's over 50, so if I always forget those, but I know because of time, we'll just wait to the end. So anyway, Weaver Fire. It started January 31st of last year, and it technically ended on February the 7th. Now, all that means is all of our command posts, all the units that had lights and sirens, they're pretty much backed out. Actually, parts of that program or parts of the incident are still going on. There's still a lot of recovery and a lot of stuff going on. So if you know anything about incidents, hurricanes, whatever it may be from FEMA, sometimes it takes years for things to actually totally close down once you get into recovery. So anyway, it's still ongoing, but there's no hazard left there. So a little bit about the background, because this all does kind of come into play. It was constructed in 1939. And the biggest thing about that is, depending on what you may have saw in the news or heard on social media or whatever, that really impacted how this thing happened, how it grew over the years, because until 1964, it was still in the rural part of Forsyth County. There was really even not a fire marshal's office until 1951. So you had a gap there in fire inspections. Also, fire inspections, unless you make major renovations, they're going to be based off whatever was done when it was built. So that's kind of the background. Really, the rest of it is not too important, except for, if you look at the very bottom there, at the time of the fire, there was around 590 tons of ammonium nitrate, and then about 5,000 tons of finished product. This is what you kind of buy at Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, like a 10 fertilizers. It's already mixed and ready to go in your garden or your fields or whatever. So that's kind of what we had. And also it was stored in rail cars, inside the facility, and outside in piles. So it was everywhere. So this here is how it looked in 1951. As you can tell, not a whole lot going on there. Just a little bit of development up there in the upper left, upper right corner. But beyond that, it was kind of out by itself. And also there was a train track that ran through there, because we know back then especially, we were dependent on having the rail system as a way to transport these products. And they were still using the rail system. Some of it was actually, as we saw earlier, stored in a rail car. So I'm not going to get into the chemistry part of this here, other than when ammonium nitrate heats up, a couple things. It's an oxidizer. It supports combustion. But when it gets so hot, it becomes really unstable. It'll put off gases that can burn, and also it's really, really unstable. And if it's detonated, any type of thing that hits it, it can explode, which is the biggest thing. And if you note at the bottom there, involved in 4 of the 10 largest non-nuclear accidental explosions in history. So really good to know about ammonium nitrate. Like I said, I'm not going to kill you with chemistry on that. But what I do want you to know about is West Texas. Does everyone remember West Texas back in 2013? Big incident. Pretty much we had 12 firefighters and 3 civilians killed, injured 260, destroyed over 150 buildings, crater 75 foot wide and 8 feet deep. And basically, if you see, it was pretty much what we had there. It was piles that were burning. There was a crust on top of it. Something fell over. It set it off and shocked it. But look at the amount out there. 40 to 60 tons is what was in West Texas. If you do the math, we had 10 times the amount of product on hand. So when you start planning and looking ahead, and by the way, I forgot to say this part, I was the daytime planning section chief for this incident. So for pretty much a week, all I did was write plans of how we would handle certain things, whether it be the operational aspect, the media aspect, information aspect, whatever it may be, you had to plan for this large event. So it had 10 times the potential. So for the first few days, it was pretty intimidating, pretty scary. So like I said, you're playing for something that could be 10 times worse than this. And it was inside of a highly populated area. So with that being said, it all started on a Monday night. I wasn't on call that week, so I don't know exactly when the calls went in, but it wasn't long before our partners at Map for Sites were called, and they were needed right then. They were needed to say, hey, we're doing a 1 mile evacuation. We need some type of imagery. Also, we need some type of breakdown in demographics to know what we're looking at, to know how many residents, how many businesses, what do we have on hand. Now, had we not worked so hand in hand with that department, like I said, ever since I've been here in 2015, it's been a close relationship, and it's gotten closer over the years. When I come on board, it started with us getting critical maps developed for our school systems in case there was an active Salem event or a fire and things like that. So it's kind of grew to other things to where they have a dashboard, to where it's tied into our reporting software that we write incident plans in. They're part of our incident management team, which you'll see the logo up there on the left corner. Our incident management team is a huge part when we have incidents here because, as we know, we're all understaffed. We're technically staffed, but our office is 5, and that covers the whole city and county. So we can, when it comes to something like this and those positions need to be filled, we have to turn to other folks to help us. And like I said, those guys did their job. They got it out quick. And in the past, I've used them for hurricanes. We had a dam that we thought may need to be either pierced or had the potential of overflowing, maybe rupturing. Within 20 minutes, they had me a data set and a map showing where to evacuate. So yes, so we worked together really good. If our emergency operations center activates, they're on that initial list. We want them there. Even during an ice storm that we thought, it's probably been 4 years ago, we're expecting a half inch of ice here, which could be treacherous. They were there at midnight sitting with us, 2 of those folks, until the next morning, rotated out. So they're always there. So the whole key message of this, even past learning past what we did, is also making sure that you go back and try to develop those relationships. Sometimes emergency responders don't think they need you, because I was one of those, I can say that. But you're a critical part of what they do. So it may be you having to start that. And like I said, I have no clue where the partnership come about with our 2 offices. It was there when I got there, but I know it's a great thing. So please take that in mind. If you have an idea, run by your fire department, run by your police department, EMS, whoever it may be. Don't be afraid to give them ideas, because I promise you, things like this makes their life much easier. Also think about, hey, we can provide you this if you need to do an evacuation. Hey, we can provide you this. We can show you where floodplains are. Because guess what? We all get heavy rain. That way, if we have to evacuate, they know ahead of time. So that's one of the products for that 1 mile evacuation. 6,500 residents, which was 2,500 households, 412 commercial occupancies, 95 additional address points. I guess they couldn't figure out exactly what they were. 61 mobile homes, 25 manufacturing facilities, 18 general government offices, 21 churches, 3 medical facilities. Now, those weren't major facilities like Atrium, Wake Forest Baptist, or Novant. Those were just small offices, so those weren't too bad there. 2 hotels, 2 colleges, universities, elementary school, 1 prison, and a retirement community. So as you see, there was a lot going on. And also knowing how far away things were was great to know, because there were some that were 0.99 miles away. And that's when all the powers to be in the facility must decide, is it safer to stay in place, or is it better to move the medically fragile out? So sometimes you have to have those hard discussions, and those did take place. Here's some more stuff. As I said, demographics are always great. I want to know, what type of folks we're looking at. Is it easy to say? If we know it's in a low income area, we know that we may have to be a little more prepared to have more folks in the shelter. We may have to be more prepared to have folks that have nowhere else to go. So they may not have the means in order to get a hotel room. So it's always important to know that. And also, when it comes down to language stuff, I know Jason mentioned about Spanish. So we had to make sure that we know it was a high-heavy Spanish population. So we had to make sure that everything was translated into Spanish also. Okay. Our storm and drinking water impact, luckily we had none, which was great. There was, of course, byproducts of fertilizer that did wash down into some of the creeks and some of the runoff. But we were very, very fortunate here. Everything that happened, it was actually downstream of all of the places that we pulled drinking water from. The next closest one was in Davie County. And there's an old saying that the folks in the stormwater world, dilution is a solution. So by the time it got down to Davie County or Davidson County, all was well. There were no issues there. So we kind of dodged a bullet there. But yes, they actually generated a nice little map. That way public health could put a map out saying, don't use these creeks here. Make sure you stay out of it. Make sure you don't fish. Make sure your pets stay out of it. Some of the creeks, I wouldn't do it on a good day, much less with this. So, but still, and also the pets is a big thing. Make sure folks know about their pets because, you know, it's not a good idea for Fluffy to get in there today. Maybe wait till next week. All right, this here is just some pictures to kind of show you how it looked before the fire. That's kind of what it looked like before January 31st. This was 10 a.m. on that Wednesday morning. That was 3 p.m. on Friday. So as you can see, there was definitely potential for these piles to have some of the fall on them and set them off. Like I said, we truly did dodge a bullet there. So the lessons learned. So we're not gonna get too deep into all this stuff here, but what I try to do is highlight things that Map for Scythe and GIS was helpful for us in. How do you notify? Well, in order to know how I notify, first I need to know who I need to notify. So that's where those demographic reports helped out a ton, knowing what type of facilities were there. So that way you can check with residents, meter readers, post office, Amazon, garbage and recycling services. Also, evacuation. Like I said, we're not going to talk that much about whether it should be mandatory or voluntary. That's a totally different discussion on its own. But also GIS support. Like I said, we had it from the very beginning. And that's what I'm telling folks around the state when I'm talking. You know, do you have this relationship? Can you get GIS folks at 2 o'clock in the morning? That's the big thing. I know I have Jason's cell phone and Brian Tuttle's as well. If I call those guys, they're going to come help out or provide somebody that will. They'll either come or help from their house because in today's remote world, COVID did allow us to get a whole lot better at doing things remotely. So either way, they're going to get us the products we need. And because of this, after looking at the incident, we want to look back and say, what can we do better? How can we improve? You know, what after action item can we do? And for future needs, hey, you know, the community wants to know, do I need to evacuate? You know, instead of having to make phone calls, which really ties up our 911 centers and other phone numbers, why not put an app out there, a place they can go on Forsyth.cc, put in their address, and see if they need to evacuate. So what I did was I took some screenshots of the program. Like I said, right now it tells you there's no current incident that is still based off the Weaver address. So here, if you put in an example of an area that's not inside the evacuation zone, you type in green, not evacuation zone. Well enough there. And if you do one that is in the zone, you see it's red in evacuation zone, please evacuate. So like I said, a great product. I hope that we don't have to use it. But at some point, we know we will. And it's not just, explicit to just fires. Anything that there's evacuation, let's say that, as I mentioned earlier, flooding, or let's say that there's some type of police situation, whether it's a hostage barricade situation, active assailant, whatever it may be, this can be used for anything that the folks need to evacuate. All right, lessons learned and considerations. I was asked to kind of go into drones and tell you my history about drones. My son is now 22, and when he was probably 14 or so, he got an Air Hogs helicopter for Christmas, and he was adamant for me to try to fly the thing, and I tried to tell him, look, you don't want that to happen. So we did it, went there on Christmas morning, flew it up. Within 5 minutes, I crashed it to the chimney, and I promise you, that thing was not in, it was in more pieces that come in the box, so I ended up having to replace that, so Santa had to replace that one. So I'm not your drone person, but what I can tell you is the lessons learned. One, do you have access to them, and where do they come from? Because in the emergency responder world, we're thinking always, police department, fire department. Well, no, there's a lot of other places that may have them. I know here in Winston, or in the city of Winston-Salem, the marketing and communications department, they actually have folks that have the drone license that can operate drones. So that's a resource we can tap into. Also, we had a call for a ton of mutual aid that I've highlighted, whether it be from our sheriff's office here in Forsyth County and from just around the state. So we tapped into that. But also, drones are not as simple as you think, because guess what? We're kind of close to an airport, so a lot of the folks that came in, when they try to take off, there's software in there that says you're in a no-fly zone. So you have to find a way to override that. Luckily, the initial department who set it up, their manufacturer, their software was able to get the codes and things they need to finally make it work, but yes, there were hiccups there. So we definitely learned from that. Also, we realized that you need to have an air boss. I'm not sure how many of you folks have ever studied the ICS, NIMS courses from FEMA. If you have, or if you're bored, take it one time. It'll make you go to sleep at night, I promise. But actually, it's very helpful. Air boss is something you always said you'll never, ever see here. Unless we're in the western part of the state and there's like a wildfire and we're doing like helicopter water drops. Guess what? With drones, the air boss is really needed because there's so much that goes on with that. Making sure the folks can come in, they can do their job, and also making sure that we're looking ahead to see. And also, you got to make sure that you know what you're calling for. Are we getting just, it goes out, takes video and brings it back, or can it live stream? Because you may get the wrong product. Sometimes you want that live stream, which is what we used a ton of. They were able to do a lot of surveillance, look at the color of the smoke to determine, hey, that pile's still looking kind of yellow, so it's probably not safe yet. So that's how a lot of the examination was done, was through the use of drones. So great tool. From what I heard, like I said, there's another gentleman in our office who is more deeply involved in this, but State Emergency Management is trying to work on some type of typing system for these drone teams because they're starting to pop up. It's pretty common, like I said, in the fire service, also the law enforcement as well. And also we've got to make sure that the radio communications with those external teams, like I said, if someone comes in from a different county, they need a walkie-talkie or some way to communicate with us. So having that plan in place is a benefit. And what I did here was I just kind of highlighted some the agencies that I know assisted with drone stuff. We had Alamance County Fire Marshal's Office and Emergency Management, Chapel Hill Fire Department, Durham Fire Department. I highlighted Forsyth County Incident Management Team. That's because Matt Forsyth, two of those guys were on the team. Forsyth County Sheriff's Office, Greensboro Fire Department, their Regional Response Team 5, which is also a hazmat specialty as well. Harnett County Fire Marshal's Office and Emergency Management, Louisville Fire Department, they're here in the western part of our county. They're the ones that kind of set the drone operations up. Matt Forsyth, because they did so much work. And Winston Police Department, they also had drones as well. All right. I actually did it in 20 minutes. It was hard, I promise you. I actually had a great video to show some things, just kind of how we worked. So you kind of get a better understanding for the incident command process and how a command post is. But like I said, I'm glad I cut it out because it was 5 minutes long. So I'll take any questions you have until I'm told it's time to stop. Yes, sir. You'd have to ask Jason Kleinfelder because Matt Forsyth did the work. So. That's where it gets complicated. The city of Winston-Salem has one system, which I believe is reverse 911. The county uses code red. So there's different things. So yes, some of that was put out, but I think what was noticed, a lot of those things, it's kind of like any type of registry. Either one, they were done based off landlines that people have disconnected, the numbers are no longer good, but they did do one of the emergency alerts also that you get on your cell phone. So that was actually used, and there was a huge amount of information that was pushed over social media, like right away as far as, hey, this is here. I mean, that map about the evacuation zone, it was put out really, really quick. Anyone else? All right, if anyone has any questions, I'll be hanging around for the next session. So please feel free to see me. Thank you.